So John Lynch has spoken. The 49ers general manager held a conference call. I was on it early Pacific time here on Wednesday morning. And this is obviously the post-trade deadline call. No breaking news. That happened yesterday when the 49ers traded for Chase Young. However, John Lynch did provide some health updates for the 49ers. And he said that the 49ers are on the verge of opening practice windows for some of the young players on their injury lists. And he was responding directly to a question that mentioned Samuel Womack III and Darrell Luter Jr., the rookie defensive back. Womack is a second-year DB. A lot of people wondering if either of these two players might be able to deliver at the slot cornerback position where Isaiah Oliver is currently struggling in coverage. We're about to enter week 9. The 49ers won't play. They have a bye week, and then it's going to be week 10. So essentially the back half of the regular season is here for the San Francisco 49ers, and they still do have to improve their secondary. Obviously, Chase Young will be somebody who they look to improve the run defense. More on that in a little bit as I directly asked John Lynch about that. But the coverage combinations haven't been good enough, especially horrific over the past 2 weeks. That's something that Steve Wilks is going to have to improve, and I think that Kyle Shanahan has been very clear about that. But the coverage tools on the back end could also use a boost. Obviously, when you look at the change of direction issues that Isaiah Oliver has been having, this is an issue that goes all the way back to training camp for the 49ers, and they didn't trade for a DB yesterday. I did ask John Lynch if the 49ers were close to getting anything else done before the deadline, since there were a lot of rumors out there and it was hard to verify what was true and what wasn't. And John's answer to me was a long one, but it included this at the very start of it. We were in a lot of discussions. Sometimes the best deals are the ones that you don't do. So the only deal that the 49ers made very pre-deadline was Chase Young. I'll get into the details of that here in a couple minutes. But the two trades the 49ers made in general here over the last few weeks ahead of the October 31st deadline were for defensive linemen. Randy Gregory and then Chase Young, two players who have established track records of success along the defensive line, but no DBs. And as far as DBs go, this health update right here is the most significant piece of news for the 49ers. How are they envisioning this? Well, they're obviously envisioning better coverage combinations. Whenever you ask anybody around the 49ers, whether it be Kyle Shanahan or John Lynch, about the struggles of the pass rush to generate sacks, they blame the secondary first. And that's where Steve Wilks, the defensive coordinator, has his specialty. He's a DB-oriented defensive coordinator, and there have just been way too many open receivers. And what's happening is that the coverage is not helping the rush enough. So the 49ers, what can they do? Well, they're on the verge of opening practice windows for Samuel Womack, who's on injured reserve, listed over here on the right side, and Darrell Luter Jr., who down here is listed at the bottom. He is on PUP. I should also put Darrell Luter Jr. into the depth chart up here just so you can visualize where he might fit in for the 49ers. So here we go. Darrell Luter Jr., PUP. Let's make that font 1 point bigger, and let's shade him in red because he still is on an injury list. Now, the practice window means that you have a total of 3 weeks if you activate one of these players to the practice window, but you don't activate them to the full game day roster. They have a window of 3 weeks to practice without counting against the 53. By the end of the practice window, you have to decide if you're going to activate them or shut them down for the entire season. So as you can see, Luter and Womack, they would both potentially pencil into this equation right here. Isaiah Oliver has been an issue in coverage at nickelback. The 49ers have been reluctant since the very start of the season to move Diamara Lenoir to nickel and slide Ambry Thomas in the corner because Ambry Thomas hasn't been good enough for them. I think physicality is still an issue for Ambry Thomas. So Samuel Womack is probably the more likely of the two young DBs here to contribute since he already has a year under his belt and some experience under his belt. But there's a lot to like about both Womack and Luter. They're both shorter DBs with good change of direction because The frames are more built toward the slot corner role, but they can both move. They're both fairly fast, especially Womack on a straight line. So the 49ers believe that both of these guys have inside-out adaptability. I do know that when they drafted Womack out of Toledo a year ago, the 49ers loved the fact that he was 5'9", but had the wingspan of a player, a corner of over 6 feet. So they felt they're getting the best of both worlds there. The shorter height, better change of direction and close spaces for that nickelback spot. Obviously a problem for Isaiah Oliver, who's much bigger, right? 6'1", 6'2". He's having trouble keeping up with the smaller receivers. But the longer arms for Womack combined with the better quickness, the longer arms have given him the potential to knock away a lot of passes that short cornerbacks with shorter arms could not reach in the throwing lane. So you clog throwing lanes with those long arms. So we'll keep our eyes out for Samuel Womack and Darrell Luter Jr. Those could be two really important reinforcements for the 49ers, especially considering the fact they're unable to trade for a DB. Again, John Lynch. We were in a lot of discussions. Sometimes the best deals are the ones that you don't do. I don't know how much truth there is behind the Adoree Jackson rumors. I mean, obviously, Jalen Johnson was out there. The reports were that the 49ers were at least very interested in Jalen Johnson, the Fresno native from the Chicago Bears, who hasn't been able to finalize an extension with Chicago. He's in the final year of his rookie deal. Former second-round pick, is playing his career-best football right now. It's possible and even seems likely that the price tag for Jalen Johnson ended up being too high on the trade market, and the Bears decided to keep him. A backup plan for the 49ers, Jalen Johnson would have played on the outside and would have kicked Diamaro Lenore inside. But a backup plan could have been somebody like Adoree Jackson of the New York Giants, who already plays the slot, who probably, if he had joined the 49ers, would just line up directly in the slot. But, when you talk about sometimes the best deals are the ones that you don't do, Adoree Jackson hasn't been good this year. I mean, the coverage has been poor from Adoree Jackson, just like most of the play from the New York Giants has been poor. So I'm not directly attributing Lynch's quote to missing out on Adoree Jackson, if that's what happened. But we can connect some of the dots in our own head right now. And you look at somebody like that, and I think he's a big name because he came out of USC and obviously has played better in the past. Adoree Jackson has been a very exciting player on both the college and at times at the NFL level. But just adding a name doesn't necessarily improve a defense. And if you look at the tape, Adoree Jackson has struggled to cover this year. He hasn't been good. So maybe that's what Lynch was referring to. Now, Isaiah Oliver has also struggled to cover this year. That's an established fact. We talk about the need for more change of direction, more shiftiness out of that nickel cornerback position. But it does seem that it's, if you don't get Jalen Johnson, and the 49ers didn't, which would have allowed Diamaro Lenore to move inside, the cost there is prohibitive for them. If that doesn't happen, it seems that the best options might come from this roster, which is why I talk about Darrell Luter Jr. and Samuel Womack, who are on the verge of seeing their practice windows open. Lynch and Shanahan, I'm sure, are going to talk about the possibility of that happening next week when the 49ers come out of the bye. But right now, the 49ers are just detoxing from the first 8 weeks of the season. They have reached that point where they can circle the wagons over the course of the bye. Lynch provided more details on the Chase Young trade. He said, Martin Mayhew, he's Washington's GM. John emphasized how important this relationship with Martin Mayhew was for the 49ers, essentially getting Chase Young for free. They're only paying Chase Young $561,000 for the rest of this season, and they're only giving up a third-round compensatory pick. That third-round compensatory pick can be recouped if Chase Young doesn't re-sign with the 49ers. If he signs elsewhere, 49ers will likely be getting a comp pick back, and it could be as high as a third-round comp pick. So this can essentially be a free rental of Chase Young if the 49ers don't decide to re-sign him, and they may decide to re-sign him. But as far as the remainder of the regular season and the playoffs go, the 49ers have Chase Young under contractual control at a very low cost. So you ask, why didn't anybody else do this? Well, John Lynch talked about the fact that he's been in contact with Washington GM Martin Mayhew for weeks about Chase Young. And Lynch didn't think anything would get done until yesterday, until deadlines spur action. But he emphasized that the relationship with Mayhew, who used to be an executive under Lynch with the 49ers and who was one of Lynch's teammates, a former DB at Tampa Bay back in the 1990s, that is what gave the 49ers priority for Chase Young. Think back a few weeks when the 49ers were able to trade for Randy Gregory at an extremely low price, essentially for free with Denver. John Lynch has played for Denver. He's got good relationships with Denver. We've seen that trading partnership go back and forth. John Lynch is very well respected around the National Football League, and that's a huge deal. That's why the 49ers, well, big reason why the 49ers have been able to be the most aggressive team in the NFL under John Lynch as GM. They've made trades every single season except for 2018. Garoppolo in 17, Emmanuel Sanders, Denver in 2019, right? They have that pipeline with the Denver Broncos. Jordan Willis, 2020. Charles Omenihu, 2021. Christian McCaffrey, 2022. That went back to the Scott Fitterer relationship that John Lynch was really able to establish and I think really smooth over when the 49ers played the Panthers. Randy Gregory, Denver, 2023. And now, obviously, the 49ers, Chase Young in Washington. And you could go back to another Washington trade, Trent Williams in 2020 with Ron Rivera. That was before Martin Mayhew was there. But the common link here is that John Lynch has really good relationships around the whole league, it seems. And for the GM position, that's really important. And he has built the most impressive roster in the National Football League. The 49ers are really damn good. 3-game losing streak notwithstanding. They obviously need to start playing back up to their level of talent. But as far as the tools that they have in the shed to make this work, the 49ers have a lot of tools in the shed. You've got a defensive line bookended by Nick Bosa and Chase Young. You have Javon Hargrave and Eric Armstead in the middle. You have a second wave featuring Randy Gregory. Drake Jackson, your second-round pick from 2022, might be on the inactive list for the 49ers, barring some injuries for the time being. And it's just really an embarrassment of riches up front. Now, again, they blame, and they should blame, because we've seen the tape, we've seen the pressure numbers, poor coverage on the back end for not buying the pass rush enough time to get to the quarterback. It is snap release without a hitch right now way too often for the 49ers. So Steve Wilkes, the defensive coordinator, has to be better. And if anything, this Chase Young move is a move that can bring the 49ers back to the basics. You got to force the issue back to the basics. I mean, it's rush with 4, drop 7 in coverage, and go. Twists, game stunts, whatever you're going to be doing up front. You don't have to do as much of that. Zone coverage is going to work on the back end. There's been a little bit too much man coverage, maybe too many switch ups entering the red zone. That's all stuff that Kyle Shanahan will audit here over this bye week and try to make sure that the 49ers defense corrects course before they play Jacksonville. A huge reason the 49ers picked up Chase Young. And I talked to John Lynch about this on the call, and this is one that I really want you to pay attention to because I've been talking about it a lot, but to verify it with John Lynch, I think this morning was important. The 49ers think that Chase Young is a 3-down player, even after the ACL tear. I mean, his pass rush pressure rate is higher than it was even before the ACL tear right now. The one thing that I'm watching tape that I think hasn't been quite up to where he was before, and that was a really high standard, has been the run defense. But it's still been good, and the 49ers believe that Young is getting better and better with each subsequent week back on the field. But he was a top 5 edge run defender pre-ACL tear in 2020 and 2021. And the 49ers right now have the number 26 ranked run defense in the National Football League, which is terrible considering they're first and second, respectively, in 2021 and 2022. When I asked John Lynch about this, he said, absolutely. He said it was a great question because the 49ers need to get that run defense back up to par. They've been giving up way too much yardage. They've been too soft on the edges, especially the edge opposite Nick Bosa. Bosa's been playing well. That other edge spot has not, especially against the run. You have to earn the right to rush the passer, John Lynch said. And he said that went back to his days in Tampa Bay when he played with Martin Mayhew, coincidentally. So it's about stopping the run, and the 49ers really believe that Chase Young is going to be a player who's capable of setting an edge to help stop that run so that the 49ers earn the right to rush the passer. So that's the news from today. Why don't we take one more look at the 49ers depth chart now? The blue, the teal, I guess I should say, those are new players. Jesse Davis, new practice squad offensive lineman, 32-year-old, 72 career starts, can play every position and has played every position but center. And obviously Chase Young, 49ers, two new additions. Now, we can also potentially see new additions from Darrell Luter and Samuel Womack in effect. You're over on the right, but for now, I'll keep them shaded in that red color. That's where the 49ers will look, though, for player reinforcements. But what they really need, they need better schematics and better execution on defense. That has been established. Steve Wilks has plenty to work with up front with this group right here. He's got plenty to work with at linebacker. He's got two good corners in Charvarius Ward and Diamado Lenore. I get it. Isaiah Oliver has been a liability in coverage. 49ers, I think, are going to be looking to upgrade that spot through some of the returns, through and you can upgrade through scheme as well. You can make sure that Isaiah Oliver is playing coverages that are, befitting of his skill set, which is actually really impressive as a physical player near the line of scrimmage. So it's Steve Wilks that has to do a lot of searching and adjusting here over the bye week. And obviously the safeties are good for the 49ers too. Missed tackle rate has been higher this year, but if everybody's in position playing comfortably, I think that's the first step toward improving the missed tackle rate. Maybe step 1A and step 1B with just resting, getting fresh. Kyle Shanahan thought the 49ers were very tired, understandably so, coming off the short week and the travel from Minnesota when they played Cincinnati. All right, let's do a quick 49ers Q&A before I get back to writing. How's everybody doing on this Wednesday morning? 49ers definitely would like Luter and Womack to be back so they definitely can build chemistry, get into the flow, especially somebody like Luter, who is a rookie this year, I think is going to need some time. The Raiders, yeah, I don't think the Raiders are very well managed, to put it mildly. What a disaster with the Raiders right now. I mean, Josh McDaniels, Ziegler, the GM, both fired last night. Mark Davis is obviously not an impressive owner. The offensive line play on Monday, they couldn't even pick up basic blitzes against Detroit. And that really does go back to the offensive coordinator. If your team is not able to handle basic pressures in the NFL time and time and time again, you got to go. And this is an offensive-minded head coach. We were in Las Vegas covering the 49ers Raiders joint practices, and never have I seen the media treated worse. And, I haven't complained about this publicly once yet. I know a lot of people did from the media, but to me, it seemed clear that was a McDaniels thing because I had previously covered the Raiders and everything had been fine. I could actually watch practice. I wasn't 3 fields away. And Josh McDaniels just had this massive insecure crackdown on everything. And the poor Raiders media has to cover them all the time. They have to watch them practice from like 2 fields away. And football fields are wide. They're 53 yards wide. So Josh McDaniels just, it seemed, was in over his head. Second time he's been a head coach. Second time he's been relieved of his duties within 2 years. Not good for the Raiders. Spider-Man, thank you. The rush is not getting there because of the coverage combinations. Is Wilks maybe making it too complicated given his background? Yes. I mean, Richard Sherman said so. It's probably true. Richard Sherman is like, they are running too much man on first and second down. Keep it simple. Run the zone that this scheme was built on. Make sure that the pass rush, too, is built on simplicity and allowing guys to win one-on-one. Don't do as much crazy stuff as the 49ers have been doing, although I don't think that is the core of the issue. I think the core of the issue is on the back end with the coverage combinations. I think that Steve Wilks has acknowledged they haven't been good enough. Kyle Shanahan has said that. Richard Sherman has very bluntly said it. I think that back to the basics is right. If it worked in the past with lesser talent up front, it should work now, right? Even with, maybe they had a little bit more at slot corner with Jimmy Ward, but you still shouldn't be getting torched at the level the 49ers have been getting torched. Offensively, yes, Debo draws a lot of attention, but Debo's also mentality. Debo's a physical mentality that I think is beneficial to the 49ers' entire operation, especially the guys who are on the field at the time. But I think it carries over even beyond that. But I think the offensive line is better when Debo's in there because he's out there to bruise. And if you have a player out there to bruise and he inflicts a few bruises on the defense, they're a little softened up, tenderized, if you will, for that offensive line to come in there and continue to do its own tenderizing. So Debo Samuel is a huge part of this team, obviously, as is Trent Williams. The 49ers run production has dropped off with the absence or the injury of Trent Williams. What happens to Drake Jackson now? Well, if they don't have room for him on Sundays, he'll be inactive just as he was down the stretch of last year. I don't think that you let go of a pass rushing asset just to make room on the roster, which is why they got rid of Anthony Brown and not Drake Jackson. And now you wait and see if you're Drake Jackson. You have to continue working behind the scenes. Obviously has some pass rushing skills, but he hasn't been good against the run, hasn't been nearly physical enough as an edge setter for the 49ers to continue playing him. So they go to Chase Young and Randy Gregory instead. Obviously, Cleveland Farrell they brought in as a run stopper. For now, I'm guessing Drake Jackson will be inactive unless there are some surprise injuries for the 49ers, and they'll see whatever develops moving forward. Maybe injuries dictate that you need him. Maybe you are able to trade him in the offseason, but he needs to continue developing and he needs to continue or just at least start getting better against some of these runs on the edge, set better edges. We know that Drake Jackson picked up a lot of strength and weight in the offseason, but a lot of setting an edge is mentality as well. The 49ers have not announced the trade yet because Randy Gregory is undergoing a physical at some point today. He has to pass the physical before they announce the trade. Brock Purdy is playing well. The people that are saying that Brock Purdy isn't playing well just don't know football, point blank. I mean, you can go ahead and send this to them. If you think that Brock Purdy is not playing well, you don't know football. Brock Purdy has made a couple mistakes, just like every quarterback in the league has made mistakes. Patrick Mahomes has thrown way more picks than Brock Purdy this year. Those same people aren't saying the same thing about Brock Purdy. QBR, the top three in the league: Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Brock Purdy. He's playing well. The difference here is that the 49ers defense is playing as one of the worst units in the league over the past 2 weeks. So they've lost a couple games. Big deal. You turn it around. You're in the NFL. You've got talent. You just add it more with Chase Young. You've got the QB that you need if you're the 49ers moving forward. And if you don't think so, learn the game. Watch some tape. Randy Gregory. I mean, both Randy Gregory and Chase Young. Or I guess people are talking. Maybe you're not talking to me here. Brock Purdy is the guy. Nothing wrong with him. He makes amazing play. Yeah, he makes amazing plus plays each game. Brock Purdy is this is upsetting a lot of people. People are just mad about Brock Purdy because they're wrong about Brock Purdy is the issue. So there's a desperate attempt to correct course because things are, a lot of people have lost credibility over the whole Brock Purdy thing, right? So there's the desperate attempt to be like, see, I told you so. They should have kept Trey Lance. Yeah, right. They would have lost by 40 with Trey Lance against the Cincinnati Bengals. But the whole Brock Purdy thing is like the I told you so's are just waiting in the bushes, in the woodwork, right? They're waiting to pop out. So they expose themselves every single time because the game that we watched the other day saw several spectacular plays from Brock Purdy, who's just trying to keep his team in the game, even though his defense couldn't stop a nosebleed. Football is a team sport. If you put a quarterback in an awful situation, you will get suboptimal results. Despite that, we saw Brock Purdy play really well against the Bengals. And that's objective. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. He played a good game with 2 mistakes. Obviously, you can't have the mistakes, but he also kept the 49ers in the game. And you put the mistakes in context. The context here is that he was fighting to get the 49ers back in it, and he made 2 of them, while a defense that's filled with all pros made 20-plus errors. What's more, 20 or 2? Somebody help me out. What number is greater, 20 or 2? Because the defense made 20-plus errors, and Brock Purdy, a 23-year-old rookie quarterback, only made 2. They're paying him $900,000. The reason that you have a QB on a rookie deal that's this inexpensive is so the rest of the roster can pull its weight in case he makes a couple mistakes, because he will. Patrick Mahomes has made more mistakes than Brock Purdy this year. Josh Allen has made more mistakes than Brock Purdy this year. Tua Tagovailoa has made more mistakes than Brock Purdy this year. Justin Herbert has made more mistakes than Brock Purdy this year. All those guys are making a lot more money than Brock Purdy this year. It's the 49ers roster around Purdy that has struggled. Purdy's been really, really, really good, and that remains the case even after the 49ers' 3 losses. Yes, today's math makes 2 greater than 20. And here's another part. When we talk about the collective bargain, the 49ers run game has fallen off a cliff without Trent Williams. They got beaten on both lines of scrimmage really, really badly over the past 2 weeks. I would say over the past 3 against the the 3-game losing streak. We've seen the 49ers get their asses kicked on the offensive and defensive lines. Every single quarterback in the league would lose 9 games out of 10 under those circumstances. When your offensive and defensive lines lose badly, your winning rate, doesn't matter if you're Tom Brady, Joe Montana, Patrick Mahomes, your win rate's going to be less than 10% in the league if both of your lines lose as badly as the 49ers have lost. Brock Purdy, to his credit, still put the 49ers in really good position to win the game against Cleveland, despite the fact that the lines on both sides lost for the 49ers. Jake Moody missed the kick. So you could argue that Purdy is doing better than somebody like Mahomes in these situations, right? I mean, Purdy has been fantastic this season, but the 49ers need to get back to the basics of winning up front. Losing Trent Williams has been the variable that has changed the 49ers run game from a productive one to an unproductive one. Without a run game, a team that is designed to run the football, Kyle Shanahan has receivers who block. He's really emphasized going out and getting those types of players. He has offensive linemen who specialize in run blocking over pass blocking. He obviously has Christian McCaffrey on the team. The way that Kyle Shanahan calls the outside zone is very dependent on the outside zone and the run game succeeding. When you have a team that's built to run the football, it has to run the football. And the 49ers haven't run the football efficiently, and then the defense has been bad, so they've gotten behind in games, and they haven't run the football enough. Losing Trent Williams and starting to play bad defense, those are the 2 things that changed for the 49ers to make this go from 5-0 to 5-3. Brock Purdy hadn't changed. Brock Purdy's been playing well throughout. He's had 1 bad game against Cleveland, and he still almost salvaged it. So to repair what's going wrong right now for the 49ers, they need to start playing better up front. So returning Trent Williams is going to be huge for this team. Returning Deebo Samuel can help that as well because of his physicality and his adaptability. And you have to start playing better defense. Both of those things need to happen. Both of those things are rooted in the line of scrimmage, right? But I think that defensively, it's rush fuels the coverage, but coverage also fuels the rush. And a bigger part of the equation has been the coverage failing behind the rush. And that's what Steve Wilks needs to fix. They hope that Deebo Samuel is going to come back after the bye. Yes. We'll get health updates next week. This was not an either or going after they got Chase Young essentially for free. They didn't stop them from getting a cornerback. So this is the wrong question to be asking. Do you think the 49ers should have gone for a defensive back instead of an edge? Chase Young is a great deal because he's coming for free, and his pass rushing productivity is better than Nick Bosa's this year. He's a top 6 edge rusher. He's been a top 5 guy against the run. They got a stud defensive end with a ton of potential at 24 years old for next to nothing. The 49ers did a third-round comp pick. He's being paid $561,000 on the cap this year. Didn't stop them from getting a DB. Now, as far as getting a DB, who should they have picked up? Jalen Johnson? Okay, the price tag was probably too high. They were in on talks for Jalen Johnson. We know this. This was reported. But they didn't get Jalen Johnson. All right, so you go down the list. Adoree Jackson hasn't been very good this year. John Lynch said today when I asked him about that, sometimes the best deals are the ones you don't do. So maybe the 49ers said, okay, hey, Adoree Jackson hasn't been great this year. We're not going to make a trade just to make people on Twitter happy or YouTube happy or social media, TikTok, whatever you want. And he could be right, especially since they have Luter and Samuel Womack waiting in the wings. And since, Steve Wilkes has just got to be better with what he has. It's not like the 49ers are talent deficient. Yes, I've been talking about Oliver struggling at nickel for the whole show. I agree with you. They have good guys across the whole roster. They really do. Oliver has been struggling at nickel, but they have more players that they can slot around, especially if they get Samuel Womack back, and that's who they're going to have to rely on. I think a lot of people were hoping for Jalen Johnson, but nobody ended up trading for him because the Bears probably wanted compensation that just didn't make sense. That would have been unfair. That would have broken the larger team building strategy for the 49ers. They want to follow certain principles and certain rules. That's how they've gotten to this point of financial sustainability with a really strong roster. So you have to be disciplined at the trade deadline. I mean, getting Chase Young at the price they got him, combined with getting Randy Gregory at the price they got him, that's some really, really good maneuvering. That's really good business from the 49ers. Christopher Schwab likes to watch. It's a gift from my wife. She also decorated the room. Got a really good wife for this football stuff. She got all those the Frank Gore jersey framed. She didn't even grow up a 49ers fan or anything, but she got a Frank Gore jersey frame. Got to give credit to my best friend for the signed Frank Gore jersey. But we've got some more exciting additions coming to the room. But anyway, blinged me out with the Oris watch. Dinner and a movie was good last night. We watched Moneyball last night. Always a classic. Moneyball mentions Visalia, my hometown, twice. The Visalia Oaks, or now the Visalia Rawhide, but the single A team used to be the affiliate of the A's, the Visalia Oaks. So I thought that was really cool. Billy Beane was on his way to Visalia. You know, back when that movie came out, the entire movie theater in Visalia cheered when Brad Pitt / Billy Beane said he's on his way to Visalia. So the problem is whenever Elijah Mitchell's in the game, the 49ers have telegraphed run, and it doesn't look like he's got the same juice as he did before. You can see why the 49ers are so reliant on Christian McCaffrey, because they're not getting the same rushing efficiency from Elijah Mitchell. I think the 49ers definitely look tired, and that's something that I warned of before we saw that game against Cincinnati on Sunday. They were coming off of the short week, right, against Minnesota. Cincinnati was coming off of a bye week. I said the 49ers' backs were up against the wall. I mentioned that several times. I said that they were like a fighter in a boxing match with 10 seconds to go in the round, and they needed to survive the last 10 seconds to get to the break. And they survived, but they didn't land a punch. They didn't get the win. So they were obviously exhausted. It was a situation of fatigue, and they didn't get the job done. I mean, it was one of those situations where if they would have dug deep to get that job done, we would have been very impressed right now. I thought that they had it in them just because of sheer desperation. I thought they didn't want to enter the bye week on a third straight loss. Obviously, they didn't want to, but they weren't able to do it. Joe Burrow was so good, and the coverage combinations were so bad on the defensive side. It was Burrow and that offense really took it to Steve Wilks and the 49ers defense, right? And because of that, the 49ers could not overcome the rest disadvantage. But it's okay. You pick it up, you move on. You're 5-3. You're still in the thick of everything. You have the bye week now. You pick up Chase Young. And after circling the wagons, you get ready to attack the back half of the season. The report that this happened came from a parody account. So I don't think that it was true. I do know that the 49ers were working the phones aggressively at around the time of the deadline. I did ask John Lynch about it. And today he said sometimes the best trades are the ones that you don't end up making. I don't think the 49ers should go up tempo. I mean, occasionally maybe to switch things up and catch the defense off balance, but the 49ers are in a position where they need to shield their own defense. Possession matters. The 49ers' own defense has a lot of issues to figure out right now. One of those 40 minutes of possession game would be nice for the 49ers, like when they corrected course in 2021, week 10 against the Rams. 40 minutes of possession in that game. And the defense had a chance to finally reset. So if you go tempo on offense, you risk giving the ball back way too quickly to the other team. I would put quite a bit on Steve Wilks. You're asking for percentage of blame. I mean, this was an elite defense. Last year, down the stretch of 2021, they were really good. The run defense has fallen from number 2 to number 26. And I get that they lost Sensa Mebucom and Charles Amenahu, but at some point, you can't have a tumble down a cliff. Maybe if they had fallen to number 15, I'd be like, okay, some personnel tweaking, some issues, but they've fallen to number 26. And then Wilks, I mean, the promise was that the coverage combinations would be more exotic, tougher to beat. So far, they've been a lot easier to beat. 19 straight completions from Joe Burrow is not getting it done for the 49ers. Shouldn't happen at the NFL level. So obviously, a lot of blame goes toward the defensive coordinator. I think the Jags are for real this year. This is going to be a tough game for the 49ers coming off the bye on the East Coast in Jacksonville. The entire line is not in flux, though. Nick Bosa is still playing well. Every single advanced metric has Nick Bosa playing well. It's the fact that the quarterbacks are able to get rid of the football to open receivers without an extra hitch, and the line in general is not having time to get there. I will say the one really bad play from the D line was early, and it did set a tone. It was damaging. And it was the play where you saw Nick Bosa and Eric Armstead miss on sacks of Joe Burrow. You want me to shout out to Tijuana? I'll shout out to Tijuana. And now, oh, so you're in Tijuana now. You used to live in Merced County. Nice. But shout out to Tijuana. Been a long time since I've been to Tijuana, but there was a time when I was a kid that I did visit. We still have some photos. Yeah, pressures are not the entire game. You're right. Pressures need to turn into sacks, which is the fault of the coverage, right? If you get enough pressure with enough time to sack the quarterback, it will turn into a sack. If you get pressure but you don't have enough time, it's not going to turn into a sack. So it's a team sport. The defensive backs have to help out the 49ers defensive linemen. Definitely be a challenge for the 49ers in Jacksonville. The 49ers are not in a position right now to determine whether or not they're going to try to keep Kinlaw. That's an off-season question. They need to just continue playing moving forward. I thought he got off to a better start, Javon Kinlaw, than he's been playing now. I don't think that he's been great against the run, which has been an issue for the 49ers line wide. They need to be better against the run. Hargrave is exactly who he was advertised to be. He's a top 3 pass rush win rate guy at defensive tackle. He's an average player against the run, great pass rusher. Again, the issues with the defensive line are going to be solved when the coverage combinations are better in the secondary and the secondary is executing better. It's as simple as that. You know, you talk about missed opportunities too from Bosa and Armstead on the first play or the first third and long of the game. The play before that, Isaiah Oliver dropped an interception. So the coverage combinations were actually good there, but the execution was bad on the back end. So there's a lot of problems here that the 49ers can solve. But the good news is that if they had solved just one of those in the game against the Bengals early on, the whole game, the domino effect might have gone differently for them. And that's what they're going to try to fix when they're fresh coming out of the bye. All right, 40-minute show. That's good. Thanks, everybody, for joining. This was fun. John Lynch spoke today. 49ers on the verge of opening the practice windows for Samuel Womack and Darrell Luter. The Chase Young trade was all about the relationships that John Lynch has built. This one with Martin Mayhew. 49ers still think that Chase Young is a 3-down player. It's important because they've got to fix a languishing run defense. When I asked John Lynch about it, he said you have to earn the right to rush the passer. I also asked John Lynch, the 49ers almost got another deal done yesterday because there were a lot of rumors online, and he said we were in a lot of discussions. Sometimes the best deals are the ones that you don't do. Everybody, thanks for joining. We will talk to you very soon.